question that we really have to be asked is, if today were our last day, would we be ready to die? Would we feel like we've achieved our life's purpose, and that might just be helping a sick relative through a difficult situation? I say that's a big thing, as we talked about
Absolutely.
before, the graham crackers and the kissing the arm. That's a definitely big thing. And as we talked about before, are there any loose ends that we need to tie up, things we need to say that haven't been said, or forgiveness we need to ask for? So really, for me, over the last 5-10 years or so, those have been all the things.
Thanks for watching the Near Death Network here on YouTube. My name is Mark Lewis. I thank you for watching our videos, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And as always, leave us your comments.
Welcome to another edition of What's Death Got to Do with It, our podcast here on the Near Death Network. My name is Mark Lewis. I'm the founder of the network, former sportscaster, and longtime metaphysician who's interested in all things near-death experience, the extension of consciousness, not articulating that death is a finite end to our existence. And I think pretty much everyone in the space now, and even in spiritually transformative experiences, including academicians and clinicians, are coming to that same consensus. And one of the gentlemen who I was fortunate enough to meet a year ago at the IONS conference, who also has a sports background, who still works in the sports industry, is Jeff Janssen, who joins us now. Jeff, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, it's great to be with you and your viewers.
Let's talk about your day job first, and your sports leadership industry that you're in and have been in for a while. I know you worked at Arizona, which was just down the road from where I am in Chandler, Arizona, outside of Phoenix. And so we had that in common. I think your background there helped you from a disciplinary standpoint in authoring your 4 books, which we'll talk about in a second. What is it the sports leadership function of your job entails?
Yeah, the main thing that I do is work with coaches and athletes to become better leaders. I think, a lot of them want to step up and lead, and they certainly have the sports skills, but sometimes they may not always have a thorough understanding of leadership. So we teach them how to lead themselves and how to lead others and how to lead a team, give them feedback on all that. So that's pretty much what we do, is help them become better leaders for their teams.
And is that typically at the collegiate level?
A lot, mostly collegiate and high school as well. I'm fortunate that I've got a great team of people too, who many of them specialize in the high school area. So we've got both high school, college, and I've done some pro here and there, but my heart's definitely in the college world.
Let's talk about what prompted you to get into the space of near-death experiences and everything that goes around it. At age 42, you had a narrow miss with a heart issue. Talk about how that started you on this path.
Yeah, 42 years of age. I had what I thought was heartburn a couple times over a few weeks, and thought, okay, I better get this checked out. Went in, and they're like, it's probably okay, but do a stress test. And I'm up there on the stress test, and it's barely going at all, no incline whatsoever. And I'm feeling the same thing again. And I tell them what I'm feeling. They're like, Mr. Janssen, step off. Here's a nitroglycerin tablet. You might be having open heart surgery later this afternoon. So
Wow.
42 years old, you're never really thinking about your mortality at that time. You're thinking maybe when I'm 60 or 65 or 70, I'll start thinking about that. But yeah, 2 young kids and a wife, and found out I had a 99% blockage of my widowmaker artery. So I was 1% away from either going to the other side or having a spiritual near-death experience. So I call it my physical near-death experience, that I came 1% away from potentially dying. So it definitely put me on a course of, okay, well, what would have happened if I had died? And I had a Christian Catholic upbringing, so I had been taught about heaven and hell and all those different things. But now when death is dumped in your lap, almost, that you really start searching for these. And that's where I found these near-death experiences, and they were answering a lot of the questions that I had, and even more so. And then it really sent me down a path of, wow, these people have amazing insights into life, death, the afterlife, and the big questions that we all kind of wonder about from time to time, but definitely wonder about when it's presented, when death is almost dumped in our lap.
Well, and I think as a preemptive incursion, you were very fortunate, as you said, 1% away from having a major incident that would have required probably a lot more medical attention than you had to give the issue. But so take me through the process then. When did you write the first book? How quickly after you experienced this hard issue did you do that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember as I go back, but it was, I was starting to do the research. I had read Raymond Moody's book and
Mhm.
Life After Life and really enjoyed that. And then Ken Ring has a bunch of different books out. So Lessons from the Light was one that really connected with me. And then I started looking at, all these different NDEs and going to some of the conferences, the IONS conferences, and looking at YouTube and finding all these different videos. And what kind of happened is there were certain themes that came through over and over and over again in terms of these messages. So the way my mind works, whether it's the sports world or the spiritual world, is okay, take all these different data points and how can you put that into a framework that helps you understand it better and apply it, and hopefully helps other people understand and apply it. So I had started putting that together probably over the course of 3, 4, 5 years or so, but it was still kind of one of those fringe woo-woo topics, and I wasn't sure how it was going to either fit or not fit with my sports stuff. So I actually had written a draft of the book, the 10 life-changing lessons from heaven, but was unsure, okay, what am I going to do with this? And then I had two actually college friends from Marquette that I had known really well, and I tentatively reached out to them and said, "Hey, I'm looking at near-death experiences. Would you guys want to look at this book and discuss it with me?" So we set up 10 different times based on the 10 different chapters and lessons, and it changed their lives. One of them was in a job that felt like it wasn't aligned with her purpose. She was making six figures, and she said, "I
Mhm.
need to leave this job because this is not part of my life's purpose." So fortunately, her spouse had some good income, that they had that flexibility, but I was seeing how this was really changing people's lives, and then got involved with helping parents heal, and started
Mhm.
sharing these insights with these parents who've had kids pass, transition, whatever words you want to use,
Mhm.
and they're searching. Obviously, death has been dumped in their lap because in their minds, they're obviously supposed to die before their kids did. And now here's one of their children who's passed, and they may have had a religious upbringing, but they're now searching, is my child okay? And is somebody taking care of them? And are we going to see them again? And all these messages from these near death experiencers provide tremendous comfort to them, because all those answers are yes, they're okay. They're doing even better than all of us here. And you
Right.
will see them again. So those were things that I was starting to see. Okay, this is really resonating with not only my college friends, but people who've had children pass, in a variety of different contexts. So that's where it started really taking off, and having different discussion groups then of these big life questions that a lot of times we either ignore until death is dumped in our lap, or just we're so busy in the day-to-day grind that we never really think about these things. So that's kind of how this is all evolved for me.
Well, I haven't written any books, but I've talked a lot and I can talk a lot. And that's what I've done for a living for 40 years. So, very similar paths, because I grew up always questioning, why are we here, and what happens after we go? Those were very curious points for me, linchpins, if you will. But I always thought, because tremendous pushback from the evangelical segment in Christianity, because it's antithetical to what their beliefs were. And we have a lot of friends who are wonderful people and are evangelicals. So I kind of cloistered my interest in this before I came out and actually did the channel. But it's been very well received, just like you said. I think everyone deep down in their soul knows these are two important questions. Why am I here, and what happens after I go? So if we can create a body of information about consciousness and our soul and our mission and what we're supposed to do in this incarnation, I think it's advantageous for everybody, regardless of your demographic or your age or ethnicity. It doesn't make any difference, because we all have a soul. We all have that individual spark of divinity. And the way that we pilot that soul is the way that our life presents itself. Sometimes Like I said, it's a direct opposite of the way we carried ourselves or were told how to carry ourselves in society. One of your most powerful books is the life lessons that are articulated in near-death experiences in life reviews. Um, Talk about that specifically, the life reviews, because I know there's different statistical anomalies with how many people have them. We know at least half do, and probably more. It's hard to quantify because a lot of people still don't come out and talk about their experiences because they don't want to be characterized, like you said, as woo-woo or strange. Um, how did you really hone in on the life review aspect of your work, and share with us some of the fascinating stories? And I've got a few favorites that I want you to talk about, but go ahead and let us know how that all evolved.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about here is this book, Your
Yes,
Life's Ripple Effect.
absolutely.
And to me, everything about the NDE is certainly fascinating. The tunnel and meeting deceased relatives and interacting with, divine figures, God, divine, whatever you name it. But for me, the life review is probably the most intriguing part and the most impactful part. And in essence, for anyone who may not fully understand what the life review is you get an opportunity to see your life played out in front of you. And a lot of people, using our sports analogy here, a lot of people say it's almost like you're standing on half court. And I'm here in North Carolina, so we've got the Dean E. Smith Center. It's almost like you're standing on half court, and all around you on every seat in this 22,000 person arena is a snippet of your life. And there might be your time when you were a baby, and then there's your time when you're a toddler, and then there's your kind of middle age, um, teen years and things like that. And then you're seeing every event of your life, and you're not just seeing it, but you're able to go back into it and feel what it was like at very high levels of definition. And you can feel how you made other people feel and why they did what they did in those situations, whether it was a positive one and they gave you a compliment, or whether it was a tension filled one and there was a lot of conflict. You get to see where they were coming from and what the real issue was probably behind it, and maybe not just the superficial conflict. So all of this is happening in this life review. And because there's really no time on the other side, many NDEers say it almost happens in an instant. But the insights you gain on your life, and not only do you see your life, but you see the ripple effect of the decisions that you made in terms of how it ripples out 20, 25 times down the road. So that compliment you gave a person made their day. They were happier. They treated someone nicely. You feel how they treated someone nicely. That person feels better and they go do something, and you get to see and feel that entire ripple effect. So for me, this life review was something that was extremely powerful. And yes, as you said, there's different statistics out there. There's many NDers that say we all will have a life review. I think
Mhm.
it's the ones, as Ken Ring calls, more the core NDEs, the deeper NDEs. Some people just have kind of the out of body experience. They're out and they're back in, and there's such a short, shallow NDE. There probably wasn't the time to have the life review that's
They
there. So
just
it
dip
tends
their
to be a
toes
little
in the
bit
water.
deeper.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah.
What?
They just dip their toes in the water. They didn't
That would
necessarily
be a good that would be
have
a
the
good way
full
of saying it.
experience. There are several that I could cite, but there's two or three that stand out to me, and I'd like you to amplify on them. One is Dr. Mary Neal, who had a very interesting, happening when I think she was in the Amazon, right, on a boat trip.
Chile.
Talk,
Yeah,
yeah,
Chile.
Chile. So talk about what happened to her, and in the life review, and what she saw what happened to her family, and then how she relegated that to an experience that she had to integrate in, even though it had some effects that probably she would have never wanted to know
Right.
about her family.
Yeah, exactly. Mary Neal has a really powerful one. She's got a book called To Heaven and Back for those that really want to get into that. And then Seven Lessons from Heaven is her follow up from that one, too. But yeah, she had a very profound life review. She saw the ripple effects, and that she saw that we may not understand certain situations from this human limited ego mindset, but everything, as she saw in her NDE, was somehow used for good. And one of the things that she was shown was the coming death of her oldest son, Willie. And
Mhm.
it was basically kind of told to her, hey, in the next 10 years or so, you are going to lose a son. And when she came back, she's like, okay, I've got to figure out somehow that this was not a real situation because I certainly don't want to lose my son. And sure enough, in about 10 years, a little bit after 10 years, just after she had published or had finished the final draft of her book before it got published, her son did get killed in a car accident, basically, or was hit on the side of the road. And it did come true. What she was told in this review was that, yes, you are going to lose a son, but you are going to need to go back and be there for your family because obviously that's going to be a traumatic time for them. And you're going to need to share your message. She said she had a laundry list of to-dos that she was supposed to do, and you've got to share this message of hope for other people. And you're going to know, Mary, that even though you're going to lose your son, Willie, you're going to know where he's going because you're
Right.
experiencing it right now. You're experiencing this love. You're experiencing it. Mary kind of sheepishly says, I didn't really want to go back, even though I had, a loving husband and four kids and a great career and
Right.
all that. It was so good on the other side. I didn't want to go back. So she had that comfort in knowing it was so good where Willie ended up
Right.
passing
That he would
to.
be fine.
Exactly.
But still, that's her son, and we're on
Right.
this third dimensional rock placed in this universe. And some of the fundamental concepts of family and love and how we integrate that into our lives is disrupted. However, like you said, she had the experience well knowing, and it's very commonplace, like for her or anybody who's had these near death experiences, say, I don't know if I want to go back, because the ones who do come back, usually for family, some type of emotional tie, but they go through significant reintegration issues. You can imagine, being on the other side where everything's idyllic, and like Eben Alexander talks about it, it's just complete love, unconditional love. And then you come back here and you go, the right hates the left hates the right, the whole place is going to hell in a handbasket. Why did I come back?
Yeah, exactly. And it is a lot of them talk about it's at least a 7 or 8 year kind of reintegration of trying to figure out, okay, now that I know this much greater reality is out there, how do I live in such a way in this reality while I'm here? And I think even those of us who study near death experiences, we too have to kind of say, okay, how, knowing what we know now about what's happening after we pass, how do we live? And that's exactly why I put together that 10 life-changing lessons, is try to, okay, let's take these principles that these NDers are learning by essentially through a firehouse of wisdom on the other
Right.
side, and now how do we integrate those into our life? So yeah, it definitely is a challenge.
Well, that's what I love about your books. It's a how-to primer, and they're hands-on primers. Because at the end of every show, I like to ask these experiencers and clinicians and academicians for different reasons. But okay, so how do we make this work? How do we embrace these characteristics of we really don't die, consciousness extends, and then be able to integrate them into this sphere of influence where we love our wife, we love our kids, we love our family, and we've got to resign ourselves to the fact that this is just the play, right? It's like a movie. So characters in a movie, when they get killed, they don't really die because it's a story, right? We're living the story of Jeff Janssen's life. I'm living the story of Mark Lewis's life, well, through my wife as well. But so we have close friends and relatives who we love, and we don't want to miss them. But as you say and articulate in all of your books, you don't really ever lose them. The veil is pulled apart a little bit to expose us to what the other side is. But then when you come back and you're governed by whatever rules are over this planet that we incarnate on, you have to get back within those rules to at least function in society. I want to ask you, because I think this is a really important part of your work and the work of near-death experiencers in general. Oftentimes in the life reviews, what we characterize as the most benign interactions are the most powerful. Like you just said, you wave to someone or you smile at someone. We don't know that lady's husband just didn't get diagnosed with cancer and she was woeful and she was disconsolate, but that smile could have turned her day around. And then when we review these life events in our life reviews, we are administering this not from a position of judgment, but just from a position of, okay, this is where you went here. This is where you went here. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be there where you ridicule a second grader on the playground and he has residual mental issues and his family has to go through this their entire life? You're not responsible for everything because everybody's a sovereign being, but you contributed because you weren't paying attention and you weren't doing the right things. I think those are the illustrative points that you point out in your books that are really powerful.
Yeah, exactly. I think so many of us think we've got to do the big things, and especially when it comes to our purpose, we have to be the president of our organization, or we have to be the pastor of our church, or the CEO of our business. And it's like, no,
Mhm.
in the life review, all of these things that society deems as successful really don't amount for much. It's usually those small, subtle, selfless acts of love, the two that I really highlight in that Your Life's Ripple Effect. One comes from Diane Morrissey. She said that during her life review, the biggest moment of her life was back when she was a 17-year-old kid. She was working in I think, an old folks home, and there was a woman there who just nobody else really wanted to go by because this person would want graham crackers. And when
Hmm.
she would eat the graham crackers, she would end up kissing the arm of the person who was eating the graham crackers. And a lot of the other people are like, "Ah, I don't really want that." Well, the 17-year-old Diane was the person who would go in and feed her the graham crackers and give her some time and let this woman kiss her arm. And it was like heaven was rejoicing for that simple, simple act. That was like the most loving, simple, sincere, selfless thing she could have done. That was the highlight of her life review. And then there's another good one in the Near Death Experience Research Foundation website, the nderf.org. I believe the gentleman's name was Mohammed, and they were driving along in a car and they needed to go get some water for something. So they stopped the car. He had to walk down to a river, get a bit of a pail of water to bring back. And as he's bringing it back up to the car, it's kind of heavy and it's splashing all over, and he knows it's not gonna get back to the car fully the way he wants it to, so he's got to dump some of it out. And instead of dumping it out just in this barren patch, he sees a tree, and he goes over the tree and dumps some of the water on the tree and then returns to the car. And in his life review, dumping the water on the tree, a tree, not a human being, but a
Right.
tree, was something that was the highlight of his life review. So you talk about small, seemingly meaningless, simple acts. That too was the highlight of his life review. So that's, I think, a really important message for everybody is you don't need to wait to find your purpose, or you don't need to wait to do something big in your community or start your own nonprofit. You got simple, loving things you can do in your own home, in your own neighborhood, at your office place. It's just a simple acknowledgement of love, respect, all of that. That stuff is what's celebrated in your life review and in heaven.
Well, and you'll know this story. I can't recall the gentleman's name, but it's to that end. It was a small thing, and I think about it all the time now. It's kind of funny. But he was driving across a bridge and he threw a gum wrapper into the river.
Yeah.
And in his life review, he saw that he contributed to the backup of that river because cumulatively his trash, along with other trash, choked the river off. The river died, and it really made an impact on him. So now when I go for walks and I'm chewing gum, I got a piece of wrapper, I look for a trash can. I'm thinking, I don't want that in my life review.
Exactly. I think that was Peter Anthony, if I remember right, but I cite that one in the book as well too, that you get to see the little things that you do add up and have a big impact, not only just, across your community, but sometimes across the world. And that's what this really ripple effect helps us see, is that what you think might be a small little thing is actually so interconnected and powerful, both in positive ways and negative ways, that really one of the main messages of the life review is that everything you do matters some way, somehow, to someone or something. And that's I mean, most of us kind of live life and we're thinking, "Oh, what does my life really matter?" Anything like that.
Right.
And this life review shows you, no, you have the ability, the power to impact lots and lots of different people. I'll give you a sports example the other day. My sister and brother-in-law both graduated from Northwestern, and I got a nice little note from them, "Hey, the Northwestern softball team is using your team captain's leadership manual to help develop their leaders." Now, I would have never known that when I first wrote this book, 20 some years ago,
Well, I
but
hope you
here's a
invoiced them.
ripple effect. What's that?
I hope you invoiced them.
Well, they fortunately they did buy the book, exactly, but you never know the little things that you do or write or say where they're going to show up somewhere else in the universe, and at some point somewhere down the road, you're never sure where all those things are going to be. So there's one of those examples of, okay, wow, I wrote this book 20 years ago, but it is now impacting the captains and the team of Northwestern softball today, right now, this season.
Talk about, there's one other very poignant, and there's multiple ones, but this one really made an impact. Some kids locked a young, I think it was a boy, in a
Yep.
room where the bees stung him. And then, so if you can relate that experience, because I think that illustrates, especially for kids, and parents can tell their kids, this is impactful when you do stuff like this.
Exactly. This is Roland Webb, and he grew up in Washington, D.C., and kind of probably some inner city housing kind of thing. And they were playing with a bunch of kids in the neighborhood, and there was a beehive on a windowsill. And for whatever reason, they're probably 5 through 10 years old. I think Roland was a little bit older, but decided, hey, I'm going to tell one of the young kids, hey, pick up that stick and go whack that beehive, and we're going to run and we're going to see if we can outrun the bees. Well, of course, the kid does pick up the stick, hits the beehive. All the kids go running to the apartment door. Roland's able to get there first. Most of the other kids are getting there. And Roland got this devious idea. Hey, I'm going to shut the door before this other kid, Heidi was his name, is going to get in. And he shuts the door, and Heidi is stranded outside. And those bees obviously were not happy. And they are stinging the daylights out of Heidi. And Roland said, in my life review, I'm feeling every single bee sting. I'm feeling the swelling that's going on. I see his mom come out of a different apartment door, all panicked because here she's seeing her son being stung by bees. I see his dad come out. I feel his rage, and all of the things that my choice, the consequences, the ramifications of the choice I made to shut that door and not let Heidi in my life review, I am feeling exactly what Heidi, his dad, his mom, and even the bees, their anger, he's feeling all of that. So it really, I think when people talk about karma and things like that, this life review, whatever you put out into the world is going to boomerang right back to you in your life review. So whether it's not loving stuff and shutting a door and having those bee stings, or whether it is positive stuff, whatever you put out in the world, you're going to feel and experience. And a lot of times at a higher level, even than what maybe you would have physically. And the thing is, it's not done to torture you. That's what I think a lot of people, especially with this story, are like, oh my
Right.
goodness, all the bad things I've done in the world, I'm going to feel those things. Yeah, you're going to feel those, but it's not designed to torture you. It's designed to teach you. It's designed to teach you that what you do does impact other people, and if you'd chosen a loving response or a helpful response or a supportive response, that's going to have a ripple effect and help other people. And if you had chosen an unloving response or a resentful response or a hateful response, you're going to feel that as well. So I think that's really, for me, that life review and the impact that your choices have. It does. So many people who've read my books, they're like, that life review thing. Before I now do stuff, I start thinking, what do I want to
Yeah,
feel in my
absolutely.
life review? And if I don't want to feel what my initial human instinct, revenge, ego might want to have, then I stop and I kind of consider, okay, what would be the loving response in this situation? So it does change and impact current people, even if you didn't have a life review or an NDE. 95% of us haven't had those, but we do hopefully live a little more lovingly because we know that NDE or that life review is very likely on our horizon when we pass.
Well, and I think based on Christianity, because that's where we grew up in this country and the canons of Christianity, I think some people think it's a punitive thing or a condemnational thing by God for us. It's my understanding, and you've written a lot about this, it's generated by us, for us, through us, to us, to illustrate, like you said so eloquently, decisions have ramifications. So don't be cavalier about everything that you do. Try to be cognizant of what you do, how you place your thought, and how you do it on a daily basis. And for the most part, that will serve you well. And then it will boomerang back to you, because we know everything is a frequency, it's a resonance, right? So that resonance will attract. We walk into a room, our parents are fighting, they say they're fine. We feel it's palpable, that sense is in the air. We have the ability to pick those things up. And you'll love this. So my wife and I, when we watch television now, or we watch the news and we say something condemnational, because we all do this, I'll say life review, or she'll say life review. you know
Right.
it's a good reminder, because we all fall into the trap of the vagaries of this experience on this planet now with all the turmoil, right? So we usually will take a side, and this is not even about taking a side. This is about taking your side for love, taking your side for the right response, your individual soul. So it's not generated by somebody who's sitting in judgment of you. It's like you said, it illustrates educationally that everything you do has a result, and it can either be good or bad, however you characterize it. But I think bad's not even a good word. It can be educational.
Exactly. I think it's Vinnie Tolman who says that, a lot of us think that the other side, especially quote that judgment day that some people have been taught about, he said that it is not a courtroom. It's not finding fault, it's not punishment, it's actually a classroom. It's an opportunity for you to look at all the life choices that you made and say, "Great job, Jeff, there. You made a loving choice," and look at the ripple effect and look at the positive things that other people felt, and then look at another situation. Oh, Jeff, you kind of made a ego-based, fearful choice, and you were just looking out for yourself. And look at the ripple effects that that then created. So it is a very kind of educational thing. It's not designed to be punitive. It was Ken Ring, I think, who said, "What more perfect form of justice can there be than for you to feel exactly what you made other people feel?" So it's not designed to punish you or to send you to hell or anything like that. It's like, okay, you had a life before you, you had billions of choices you could make. Here's how those choices impacted other people. And guess what? You're going to feel them all yourself. So I
Mhm.
don't know of a better learning opportunity. And we talk about the sports world as well. I mean, so many coaches will watch video afterwards. And the intent in that video is to give you a chance. Okay, you had a situation in front of you. Here's what you saw. Here's the choice that you made. Here are the ramifications. We lost the ball in that situation, or we lost the game in that situation. It's the same thing in life. Okay, here's your life. Here's a choice that you had in front of you. Did you handle it lovingly? Let's play that out. And in the life review, too, you're often shown, hey, not in a "we told you so" manner, but hey, had you made this choice, this is how this situation could have played out. So you not only see what you did, but you also see what you could have done. And here's one thing that I think comforts a lot of people, especially if they're still kind of worried about that life review and they know they've done some unloving things. A lot of NDers say, if I took responsibility for that situation during my lifetime, if I asked for forgiveness or made amends in some way, that situation that I was really scared to see, I didn't really see in my life review, or it was gone over so quickly because I own the lesson. I took responsibility for it. I asked forgiveness for it. So I didn't need to be shown that play or that life instance
That's a great
because
point.
I learned the lesson from it. So here again, this reinforces we're only seeing these things because a lesson of love was taught in that situation and we needed to see it or feel it. But if we owned it during our lifetime, we learned it. We don't need to see it again in our life review or feel it again in our life review because we got the principle. We got the loving message out of it. So that's something that has also motivated me is to try to make amends and to ask for
Hmm.
forgiveness while I'm still here so that, I can not, I'm not just doing it so I don't see it in my life review, but it is an opportunity to own those things now versus dread it when you've got the life review coming.
Right. It's a genuine outreach by you to whomever you might have offended. And you and I talked about this a year ago. And
Yeah.
I asked you about it. So, because I know I've offended a lot of people in my life and far too numerous to go back and retrace my steps. But I talked to Jeff Olson, who's also a mutual friend of ours and an experiencer. And I said, well, Jeff, how would you, um, reach out to individuals who you can't really even find, or people that you don't recall or you were abrupt with in an encounter that was very brief? He said, just open your heart and spiritually ask for forgiveness. So that's kind of what I did. But to an old girlfriend, I reached out to her and I said, I know it's a little strange, but I was very immature when I handled the way that we broke up, and I hope you'll forgive me. And you don't have to respond. And she just responded and said, that's very nice that you would reach out and say that. And so that was it. And it was heartfelt, and I'm sure she could figure that out on her own because we hadn't talked in years, and it had some finality to those actions when we were immature and we made those kind of you know proclamations that don't serve our soul well. Can I ask you one thing? I just did a podcast last week with Dr. Riz Verk, who's a MIT Stanford based scientist, the simulation hypothesis, if you're familiar with his work.
Yeah.
His hypothesis is that because of his background in video gaming, this life that we go through is chronicled on our hard drives, because he said, if you have these, and he looked at ancient traditions and religious traditions and how the life review is prominent in all of them in some way, shape, or form, that we're really rendering almost like holographically our existences here. Um, do you see that dovetailing with the work that you've done? And my final question is, I asked him, well, who's the boss then? He goes, well, that's the $1 million question. We don't really, are we the boss, or is God the boss, or is God and us the boss? What do you think of that theory?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of validity to it. When near-death experiences are coming to that realization, when computer people are coming to that realization, when ancient philosophers are coming to that realization, when physicists are coming to the realization, all these different disciplines are starting to come into the same kind of thing. I think really what it comes down to is we are souls. We jump into these human bodies. We have a human experience. We have the veil where we forget about eternity. We forget about our loving nature. We forget about our connection with source and everyone else. And we feel like we're all alone here and we've got these egos and we have to take care of ourselves. And really, what I kind of come down to with studying this stuff now for close to 15 years or so and over 5,000 NDEs is this is really probably an unconditional love trainer. So we get a chance to become a human being, put ourselves into these bodies, into these life situations. And the whole challenge is, even though we're getting these ego kind of impulses of, hey, take care of yourself or watch out for that person, they don't like you. Can we choose love, even though internally we might be wanting to choose fear or selfishness or everything else? So it's kind of an opportunity. Can we come from our higher self than our human self? And over time, what I think we're given the opportunity to do is, can you make more higher self choices than
Mhm.
human self choices. And Andy Petro, who's an NDer, has lots of YouTubes out there. I've talked with him. He said during his life and his NDE, he was asked, did you choose loving more often than not? So I think our challenge while we're here is to try to be loving 51% of the time and unloving 49% of the time. And over time, we're trying to change that percentage because of what we learned from NDers, because of how we learn and grow ourselves and evolve. Hopefully, we become more and more enlightened that maybe 65% of the time we're
Mhm.
choosing a loving response and only 35% unloving. So I think this life, this opportunity is a chance for us to become more unconditionally loving. And then very much like like we said, with a video or even a simulation trainer, you get to see it all at the end and you get to see, yep, loving choice there. Good job. Oop, not so loving
Mhm.
choice there. You got to feel it. Okay. Now, if you get another opportunity, hopefully you're going to make that loving choice.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned at the outset of this answer that it's divinity stuffed in a meat suit, because that's what he literally said avatari means. I think he said in Arabic, I can't recall the genesis of the word etymology, but for divinity, like you said, to come into the body, have the slate wiped clean, and you kind of have an inkling of what's good and what's not. And then you get this primer as you go through life, and based on these collective experiences, like you quoted, Dr. Jeff Long does a great job with NDERF. I know a lot of people that have had these experiences, like Bubba Herrick, who we know, and a younger guy, have never had an opportunity to have it validated. They think they're crazy. So they don't really find their pack. They don't find people. And, Bubba drove out here from Florida in his car, to be with this cadre of people that could validate his experience. And now he, along with several other young people, are taking the mantle and pushing it forward to show that consciousness just is, it never ends. So make the most of your opportunity, albeit in a limited function. When you take the Etch a Sketch and you shake it, and our minds are wiped clear, you'd have to start from ground zero. But you have that nucleus of love deep down residing, and that's the right thing to do. So err on that side instead of the other side.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Bubba's got a great book, Becoming Ready to Die, and we're actually doing a book club discussion with him right now. And he's 25-ish or so,
Yeah,
and he learned that at the ripe old age of 19. But I think all of us, no matter what age we are, the question that we really have to be asked is, if today were our last day, would we be ready to die? Would we feel like we've achieved our life's purpose? And that might just be helping a sick relative through a difficult situation. I say that's a big thing, as we talked about
absolutely.
before, the graham crackers and the kissing the arm. That's a definitely big thing. And as we talked about before, are there any loose ends that we need to tie up? Things we need to say that haven't been said, or forgiveness we need to ask for? So really, for me, over the last 5, 10 years or so, those have been all the things. I had an eighth grade football coach who had a huge impact on my life. And one of the things I wanted to do was to thank him. And I thanked him, and I named a leadership academy after him at our hometown high school. So I wanted to thank the people that made a big difference in my life. And I wanted to say I'm sorry to the people that I've hurt, and I've done that too. And in some cases, it's been well received. In other cases, it's still being processed, probably. So for me, yes, I still have a wife and kids and things that hopefully I can contribute to the world. But if today were my last day, I'm probably 96, 97% good with that right now. And I think that's kind of the challenge for all of your listeners right now. If today were your last day, where would you be in terms of your percentage of, would you be good? Do you feel like you've done what you need to do, said what you need to said, forgiven who you need to forgive, and asked for forgiveness from who you need to ask for forgiveness for? Because if you do, then if it is your last day, then you can go with a smile on your face and enjoy that life review. If you've got some things that you're like, yeah, I got to deal with that, The time is now, folks. The time is now.
Absolutely.
Bubba almost died at 19 with a
Yep.
routine Tommy John surgery. You never know if today is your last day. So that's the whole message of End of Years and all my books is, you know what? Live today because you're not sure if you're going to be given tomorrow.
I agree 100%. That's great wisdom, and that's why we all do this collectively. We all have a part in raising the consciousness of the planet. You don't have to be into near-death experiences to do that. You can be a wonderful human being who's never even been exposed to this. But I think this information helps buttress the argument for, like you just delineated, we need to be cognizant of everything we do. But we only need to get to 5149. So
Right.
it's not so onerous that you have to be 100-0. Very few people, even saints and sages, walk that way. Jesus said, "Of these things, you too shall do greater things than I." And people go, "You kidding me? That's Jesus." We can't do that. The archetypes of deity and all these different areas of the world typically are represented when people transition. In Christianity, it's Jesus, but if it's in India or some of the Far East, it might be Buddha. Or if you're in where you were just, New Zealand and Australia, if you're the Tassidae tribe who lived in an Aboriginal colony in the back country, and you had cave dwellings and you had deity that was articulated on that, they might show to help shepherd you through that transition of this physical life into the life of reality. So if people want to get a hold of your books and or you in person, what's the best contact information? And we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I've got a website called lifelessonsfromheaven.com, and that's probably the best way. My email is jeff@lifelessonsfromheaven.com, and we've got obviously a blog up there that I've had several different blog posts that I think people might find intriguing. And then all of our different resources are up there as well. And if people want to contact me for any speaking stuff, they can do that there too. So yeah, that's probably the best one is lifelessonsfromheaven.com.
Appreciate your time as always. We could go on forever, but I think we've covered pretty much a lot of fertile ground for people who don't have an in-depth look at what you've done and accomplished from an authorship standpoint with a day job, leading a leadership function and a family and mortgage like we all do. We all have these things that we go through in life, but if we can lift people up with some of these insights, I think it's time well served. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I appreciate you getting these messages out there. Obviously, it's nice to see that I think more and more people each and every day are starting to get interested in these things. And as I said, a lot of times it's not until death is dumped in their lap, either with a loved one that's close to them or their own mortality starts to get questioned. But yeah, there's a nurse I've worked with, Melissa Heron, who's had her son Carson pass, and she's been one of our soul peeps for the longest time. And what she really recommends is, you know what, rather than waiting until the world does dump death in your lap, read about these things ahead of time because you're going to be so much more equipped and prepared and ready. It's still going to be hard, but you're going to know, like Mary Neal with her son Willie, hey, this grief is here, but I know where he's gone. I know he's going to be taken care of. I know I'm going to see him again. And that kind of comfort, I think, takes just some of the absolute, horror and terror off of these really difficult times. It gives us a sense of hope and comfort and peace.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Look forward to visiting again. Have a great rest of your weekend.
You too. Thanks, Mark.